I only very recently realized that I'm trans and a lesbian. I only realized these things about myself just a few months ago. But in these few months, I've been through some stuff that I don't really know how to react to. I'm sorry for how long this post is. It's a really long story because I've been through quite a lot, and I just want to get this all off my chest so I can try to move on and heal from it. I also am leaving out a lot of details from the story to keep it from being even longer than it already is. And because I don't want to have to think about this situation even more than I already am. But anything omitted is generally not relevant or important enough to warrant a mention. Even though there were other things that this girl did to me, they're minor compared to the things mentioned here. Also, I don't expect anybody to read all of this. But if you do, I really appreciate you for giving me your time, since I know this is a pretty big wall of text from an absolute stranger that nobody should feel obligated to read or reply to. A bit of backstory first. I dated this girl, we'll call her Violet, from October 2023 to September 2024. This was before I had realized anything about my gender or sexuality. During that whole time, I believed I was pansexual and a femboy. So me and Violet have a weird history. When she and I first started talking, we instantly hit it off. We went from having just met each other to basically being a couple within the span of a day or two, without even really knowing much about each other. I really liked her energy, and she seemed to like me too, so I wasn't going to complain. She was also really pretty, so I definitely wasn't gonna complain. Anyways, we were a long-distance couple, living about 600 miles apart, and met through a Discord/Twitch community that we were both active in. Also, she's trans and has had really bad dysphoria for a long time. So even though I genuinely felt she was really pretty and I was always really attracted to her, she never was able to believe my compliments. But I always tried my absolute best to reassure her, and to try to ease her dysphoria as best as I could because I knew how much it would eat at her when it got really bad. She and I met in person in April 2024 when I took a long trip by bus to stay with her over spring break. And things were going really well between us at that point in the relationship. We'd gotten really accustomed to calling each other nearly every day. We still hung out in our shared communities. We had a lot of fun spending time together. We didn't really go out much while I was there visiting her. We really just stayed in and cuddled pretty much the entirety of spring break. However, leading up to the visit, there was a lot of lewd back and forth between us about the kinds of stuff we could finally do together. And when the time came when it would finally be possible, she initially seemed excited, asking something like, "Should I make a mess of you before or after you shower tonight?" And when I jokingly asked why we couldn't do both, she sort of backed out entirely and sat me down and started talking about how she might be aromantic and asexual. And I was afraid that this could be a big hit to the relationship. But again, we were only 5 months in, so it wouldn't be too big of a deal if it ended at that point, especially since I always wanted to be supportive of her. So I listened to her about it and told her that whatever she realizes about herself, I'll always be there for her and support her, whether as a partner or just as a friend. So I showered and we went to bed, and then if I'm remembering correctly, we didn't even kiss for the rest of the visit. I didn't want to make anything awkward for her. After I got back home at the end of spring break, we talked a bit more about everything, and she came to the conclusion that she was just scared about everything, and she thanked me for the support. So we stayed together, being all happily romantic, talking about our future together, joking about eventually being married. We often talked about how things would be perfect when we finally move in together, because we seemed to genuinely really enjoy each other's presence when we called. Plus, she knew I was living with very queer-phobic parents, so she knew how badly I want to be away from them. So she kept talking about how things would be better when I come to live with her. I was sort of depending on her in that regard, though I know I shouldn't have been, And we never did end up moving in together, and I still live at home with my parents, so nothing came of it in the end. Anyways, everything seemed to be amazing between us for those first few months until it wasn't. I need to interject here and mention how in my first long-distance relationship, which was from May 2021 April 2022, I was with a girl, we can call her Avery, and our relationship followed this same sort of immediate high, then coasting on that high for a few months before a sudden crash. I had only known Avery a few weeks before asking her out, but she seemed to like me a lot and said yes, and throughout our relationship, she seemed really happy, except she would often self-harm and threaten suicide whenever anything went poorly in her life. And she would often tell me that I was the only reason she was even still alive. That put a lot of pressure on me to be there for Avery and support her, and try to keep her motivated to stay alive. I loved her a lot, so I was ready to put in that effort for her, but it was still very mentally taxing. Eventually, however, she became really distant. From January to April 2022, she basically didn't talk to me much at all, other than occasionally reassuring me that she still loved me. She still accepted gifts from me, like a bouquet of flowers I had sent to her for Valentine's Day and other small gifts throughout those months, though she accepted them without really thanking me or anything since she wasn't talking to me much at all by that point. And then in April, she finally broke up with me, explaining that she didn't really want me those final few months, but didn't want to hurt me either, so she toughed it out and stayed with me until she couldn't bear it anymore. The point being, after my visit with Violet over spring break, I opened up to her about Avery and how she had kept me around for months, sort of taking advantage of my love and my kindness before finally letting me go. And Violet assured me that she would never do anything like that to me. The next month, Violet lost her job, and she went into a really deep depression that lasted for quite a long time. I tried not to let it affect me too much, and I tried to still be there for her and support her as much as I could. I offered to help her look for places to apply to. I started offering to help her with groceries and meds and other expenses since she didn't have a source of income anymore. She was really reluctant to accept the help, but I knew how much she needed it and assured her it was okay, to which she finally accepted whenever I did offer. Eventually, though, she became really distant, spending more time with her friends than with me, finding excuses not to call, not even really texting much anymore. So I asked her, hey, be honest, what's up? And she finally told me that she hadn't really had any feelings for me for the past few months of the relationship. From basically June to September, she had only stayed with me because she wanted me to be happy. She tried really hard to convince herself that she wanted to still be together, but she just couldn't. But at the same time, while breaking up, she told me that she still loved me, and that she would have lived with me if it weren't for her loss of motivation due to the depression from still having not found a job by that point. I still loved her and cared about her a lot, so I tried to cling onto hope for her. I tried to still be there for her. I didn't think I could get over her after everything. She got really distant again, while at the same time talking to me about how she wished I would let her go so that she could end herself, because she didn't feel like it was worth going on anymore. That made me only cling to her more and want to stay there for her and not let go, so that she wouldn't let herself go. I continued to be there for her for the next 7 months, helping with groceries and meds, offering to help her order food whenever she would go all day without eating because she didn't have much left in her pantry, buying her gifts to try to keep her spirits up. I really cared for this girl and wanted her to be okay. But in the back of my mind, I also still really loved her and held on to hope that one day she might love me again. Slowly over time, she became less distant again. We started calling a bit more frequently again after going months without calling at all. And in February 2025, I realized that I wasn't a femboy and that I'm actually a woman, and that I'm a lesbian, and I came out to Violet by telling her that I no longer dreamed of being her boyfriend again, and that I instead wanted to be her girlfriend. She was the first person I came out to, because she was the one who had helped crack my egg by randomly calling me things like girly. It made me realize how badly I wanted to be her girly. And after I came out to her and told her that, she said she still didn't have feelings for me at that time. But then in March, she randomly started teasing me in a lewd way you'd typically only tease someone you have feelings for. Like calling me a slut, telling me to suck her girl dick, doing everything she could to get me flustered, and then teasing me even beyond that. She did this on multiple occasions, seeming to get a lot of enjoyment out of making a mess of me. But when I finally asked her about it, she told me that those moments were her trying to find a spark with me again. But she said she didn't find it and that she really didn't have feelings for me again. And then suddenly a couple weeks later, in April, we were talking one night and she sent me a lewd pic of herself, and she was teasing me again and calling me a slut, and we sent some Yuri back and forth. And then practically the next day we were suddenly dating again and loving on each other really hard. I asked her where the spark came from so suddenly, since she had just been looking for it a few weeks prior and didn't find it, and she said she honestly didn't know. Again, I wasn't gonna complain, because she was the same pretty girl who I had loved for our entire previous 10-month relationship, and then 7 months of us being apart. It felt like I was dreaming, the fact that we were finally together again after how long I'd hoped for that to happen. We were like the happiest, cutest, most loving lesbian couple you'd ever seen. Except she didn't want anybody to see. When I talked about making our relationship known to anybody, even in our smaller shared communities where it was just me and her and a few of our mutual friends who knew that we dated the first time, she told me she'd rather not have people in her business. So I respected it, didn't question it, and continued loving her just the same. There was a lot more back and forth teasing and lewd talk and stuff between us, more talk of being married, just so much romance for the entire next month. I was a little bit insecure in my status as her girlfriend because she's really far into HRT and stuff, and I haven't done any medical transitioning at all because of the environment that I live in. So she was sending me nudes and selfies and stuff whenever we would get each other off over text. And I couldn't send her much of that type of stuff back because I was really self-conscious about my current appearance. I felt selfish accepting those photos and videos of her without giving much back, but she reassured me that it was okay and that she wanted me to be selfish about her. She told me she liked when I cling to her. She wanted me to want her all to myself. She said she liked knowing whenever I was getting off to her. She said it did things to her body that she couldn't even explain. It made her feel good. So I continued trying to get her off with just my texts about how badly I wanted her, and she seemed to still be into it, and everything seemed fine for a while. Then my anxiety started to get the better of me, and started asking her for reassurance that this relationship was really what she wanted, and she wasn't just doing it for me, to make me happy, like the final months of our first relationship. She reassured me and I believed her. But in the back of my mind, I was still anxious about it. Anyways, a few weeks later, in late May, she got really distant again. I started joining some VTuber Discord servers and found her in one of them. Saw some of her old messages in that server and she was flirting with the owner, we'll call her Sarah, around the same time she and I got back together. I confronted her about it. She broke up with me, told me that she regretted flirting with Sarah, and told me that she isn't fit for a relationship. Few weeks later, I start asking about that whole situation again, and learned that she had gotten with Sarah a few days before the whole confrontation happened. So she had been cheating on me that whole time, but Violet told me that Sarah had pushed herself onto her, and that she just never said no. Violet said that all of the flirting between herself and Sarah had meant nothing to her, and that she was leading Sarah on that whole time. Violet said that she isn't good for a relationship with anyone, and told me she planned to talk to Sarah soon and break up with her so Violet could focus on fixing herself. I directed my anger toward Sarah for coming onto her that whole time, but was also upset at Violet for never telling Sarah that she was in a relationship. And Violet started playing the whole suicidal card again, acting like she needed to right her wrongs and then kill herself so that she couldn't hurt anybody again. So I stayed up late into the night trying to comfort her and calm her down. Then a few days later was Violet's birthday, so I tried to make it the happiest day it could be for her since I still felt bad for her after the suicidal night. I bought her a game that we could play together since she had recently told me how much she'd wanted to play it again after we'd played it together in person over spring break. And I also sent her $150 so she could treat herself on her birthday, especially since she's still unemployed at this point, and I wanted her to have a happy birthday even if she couldn't afford to splurge for herself. And that whole time between the breakup and the birthday, I kept talking about the possibility of seeing each other in person again, and being close and maybe getting back together again once Violet worked on herself like she claimed she would. She never shut any of this down. She let me happily keep talking about my hope for us for the future. After all of this, I finally reach out to Sarah, who tells me that Violet had been coming onto her ever since they met, which was around the time Violet broke up with me all the way back in September, and that they had been really close all that time, and none of what Violet had told me about leading Sarah on was true at all. Then I get to talking to Sarah a bit more and telling her everything Violet had put me through, and Sarah talked to one of Violet's friends and found that Violet had cheated on me even prior to getting with Sarah. So all of my fears and anxieties from being back together with Violet were completely justified because I learned that she had never wanted to be back with me in the first place, and that none of it meant anything to her. After she knew she'd hurt me when we first broke up, she knew I loved her and cared for her for 7 months between the relationships, and she knew how much trust I had in her to not hurt me again when we got back together. Anyways, Sarah decided she still loved Violet after everything I had told her that Violet had done to me. So they're still together. Violet faced no consequences for what she did to me. She took advantage of me and my emotional vulnerability and my financial support. I sent her nearly $2,000 in the time that I knew her, which doesn't sound like much, but I already don't have a job that pays much, so it was a big portion of what I'm earning, and then discarded me after everything she put me through. After I gave her so many opportunities to tell me the truth, honestly, I was basically constantly begging her to be honest about stuff during our time together, yet she still lied and hid and cheated. Denied the cheating even after the breakup. Then when she admitted to cheating on me with Sarah, she instantly said something along the lines of, "Before you ask, this is the first time I've cheated. I'd never done this to you before." And then, like I said, I later found out anyways that that was a lie too, and that she indeed had cheated before. And then she blocked me for wanting answers, eventually unblocked me and sort of victimized herself again, and then stopped responding to me when I asked her about some other stuff she'd lied to me about. After everything with Violet, I was so emotionally broken that I even had to find a new name to go by, because of how mentally attached I was to Violet calling me by my previous name, especially in flirty and lewd contexts toward the beginning of us being back together. When she would say I had picked the most moanable name for myself, and she would call me Miss My Name, whenever I was the top while we would get each other off over text. Since she was really into, or I guess was pretending to be really into, me taking her and using her and having control over her sexually and making her completely mine and having her obey me and serve me. So in my mind, the name I had been going by was completely mentally connected to the idea of her being mine, because of just how much I heard the name in that context. I'd even told her that a big part of what made me feel like that name fit me so well was how perfect it felt to hear her call me it. So now, even though I've picked a new name, I still don't feel like any name will ever fit me as well as the previous one did. And so now I'm also afraid that ever hearing that name again will bring back these memories, even after I've long moved on and forgotten Violet and what she put me through. Anyways, after all that time that I'd loved her, and all the months that I thought I'd never be over her after the first time we broke up, here I am getting all of this off my chest, looking for advice on how to get over this and asking whether I was too trusting of her. And then I never want to think about her ever again. If what she wanted all along was for me to finally be over her, then I guess she's got what she wanted. But it's also probably going to be a long time before I trust anybody again enough to be vulnerable with them and let them get close enough to me to start another relationship, because I don't want to risk going through the same type of hurt as I went through twice with Violet. So my question is, where do I go from here? Friends, please share your experiences. Who has been in a similar situation? I look forward to your advice, and let's discuss this situation in the comments below this video. Thank you to everyone who helped me. Story 2. In my first romantic relationship, which ground up years of my teenhood into lesbian misery, a girl couldn't figure out if she loved me romantically, or if she was straight after all and loved me platonically. Eventually, I ended the relationship due to these doubts churning up my mind, and now she is dating a man with brazen, powerful, open-handed love. Her love for him, to my outside understanding, does not appear or feel hesitant in any way. Years later, a deep, raw part of me still does not trust others to love me. I have almost an object impermanence for love, though I try to keep my partners blissfully ignorant to this fact in case my grasping, needy claws repel them even further. So my current / soon-to-be former partner, we've been together for 5 months, exiting the honeymoon stage, have been having a couple growing pains here or there, but always connect back together in the end and reaffirm our love with an aim to work on and resolve our conflicts and get our needs met mutually. In the beginning, they were just brimming with love and affection. They were constant and willing and eager, and I felt as if maybe I could reach an equilibrium where they could excite me and make me feel safe. I have endured the lovely agony of slowly opening myself up to them, though it has been hard, and we have grown very close very fast. A tiny part of me was finally daring to wonder if I had finally found my person. This is the first healthy relationship they have ever been in, and they have seemingly struggled with irrational fears about the fundamental nature of love, how to prove to themselves they are in love, what romantic love means to them. And we have had 2 very intense conversations where they, for lack of a better phrase, freaked out and wondered aloud, and at length if they were even in love with me romantically or if they just needed a friend. In both these cases, after some curious discussion and reassurance from me, they suddenly snapped out of, as they described it, rushing to reassure me that they were just in their head and tying their feelings up in knots. That, of course, they were in love with me. Obviously, these conversations were really scary for me though, especially when they would ask me to justify the relationship's existence like it was on trial, but I tried to be fair. As a person, my partner seems to be on a skeptical, restless search for the ontology of many abstract concepts: spirituality, intimacy, understanding of their own personality. This fact, in combination with my knowledge that they struggle with significant wounds from multiple kinds of intimate relationships, made me assume these scary moments were produced more by anxiety about the uncertainty of the world and their close relationships than wavering feelings about me. Additionally, I am a firm believer in actions speaking louder than words. Though these conversations exploded onto the scene in dramatic fashion, they were resolved neatly, with concrete disavowals of any lingering doubts, and my partner's actions within the relationship always made me feel loved. But these past couple weeks, a gut feeling of dread accumulated like evil intuition poison inside me. The alarm in my brain was raised. Specifically, this bell's peal sounded distressingly like, Danger, danger, your partner, whom you love, is falling out of love with you and is going to break up with you soon. They had been in contact less, and their attempts to seek out my company and connection were dwindling. It was so hard to keep the crazy anxious GF inside me chained up and not seek reassurance to neutralize my obsessive rumination every time they didn't acknowledge a text I sent, respond to something I said over the phone, or just seem vaguely uninterested in my life and my inner world. Yet each time I self-soothed, reminded myself that just 2 weeks ago they had invited me to a family gathering, and that only a week ago, when we last hung out they gave me a key to their apartment and generally doted on me and made me feel loved. Is that the behavior of someone who feels they are falling out of love with you? Apparently, yes. Last night, they texted me that we shouldn't initiate our nightly call, that it would be a bad idea, and that we could talk tomorrow. I said I hoped they were doing okay and sent them a good night and I love you, my little ritual that is very important to me to establish a little connection when we aren't seeing each other often due to work, and they could not say it back, because they couldn't mean it in the way I wanted it. And that they loved me, but weren't in love with me anymore. They then implied that if we talked tonight, I would be in bad shape afterwards, and that they didn't want to do this tonight or over text. I did ask them if this was another case of them spiraling, maybe if I'm not present to emotionally chaperone one of these moments in person, my partner would unravel further than ever before, but they did not respond directly to this. So obviously, I'm pretty damn sure they intend to break up with me. So that's devastating. And the rationale that they just suddenly decided they're not truly in love with me after all, mind you, they said, "I love you" the day before. And they have stated they would only use those words if they mean them unequivocally, is written especially to slip right into the language of my personal story, that the people I love cannot be trusted to love me, that they will never love me with the value and measure I feel for them. I am just so destroyed. We had a date planned for tomorrow. I have a lil gift ready for when they pick me up from work today. Obviously, I think the date plan has been changed to a breakup cute date idea. It's not just that I'm going to be starting over worse off than before, more scared than ever before, it's that I'm going to lose this unique, beautiful, fascinating person. I've already lost their love. My stomach just hurts and hurts. I feel like they're going to find someone who inspires the potent, unquestioning love they don't feel for me. But God, why couldn't that be me? What's wrong with me? Will I ever find someone whose love for me isn't hesitant but knows completely what it is? Am I just unlovable? I would like to hear your opinion. Please write in the comments below this video what you think about my situation. I would be grateful to everyone.